This is a guide for assembling and using the new loading device for the Boston Society of Civil Engineers Model Bridge Contest. This was newly built by Reed Brockman and Dan Howard in 2026. Dan Howard built everything. Similar to the old device, you'll still space the tables 3 feet apart by putting the spacer bars wedged up against the faces of the table. But once you do that, now instead of needing blocks to lift up the tables, we are using the abutments to pick the bridge up high above the tables. If you look at the what we're calling the bridge seat, it's got 4 bolt holes in the bottom, and those 4 bolt holes now bolt into the spacer bars. And similarly, you place the back wall on top of the bridge seat, and there are 4 bolts that go through. You should always do these with the bolts pointing upwards. You drop the washers on top of those, and you use the butterfly wing nuts to tighten it up and put it all together. These holes were drilled pretty precisely so that they will there'll be no movement in the abutment when we put bridges on the device. This means that every loading assembly has 8 bolts and wing nuts at each end, so there are 16. So the most important thing is making sure you know exactly where that bucket of bolts is to put this together. Without that, you can't assemble the device. Loading plates were refurbished, but not really modified, except for to give a bigger spacer and a more consistent spacing for the weights to sit on the loading plate so that we can pick them up and get our fingers underneath them. Other than that, we still have the 4-inch lift blocks to make sure that the device is set 4 inches above the ground. And just as before, these should be for every bridge set so that they're longitudinally along the center of the bridge underneath it. So when we hook up the chains, the student can grab both of them at the same time and pull them out from one side.
So imagine this thing is a truss right here. We want the truck to be on this roadway right here, right? It's on the other side. They can't get through because it's got all the chains and the hardware. To do this hardware at this end is going to have to come off. So now we can just put the truck onto the roadway part. Now when it's in, we're going to have to go through the truss. We have no hardware on there, so it slides right through. We go in until we get to the centering pin. We drop in the centering pin. And that's in there. It's locked in place. Now we just got to put the hardware back on the end. All right, so here it's going on again. And now we're set to hook up the device once we got that all set up. This is what it takes to do through truss loading. Now we're going to quickly get the chains back on. The big trick is the turnbuckles before we start. Make sure that they're in the middle after each loading. So while the chain's still on, spin it backwards is the easiest way to get the gap to be so you got about 2 inches open in the middle. Counterclockwise is what makes this open wider, like this. So it should be like this when you leave it. Here this is so we need less precision. I can leave this with a little bit of slack in it at the beginning, but the important thing is that you got to close up this. You got to thread it so that it engages, so that we don't bend it. And then you're going to turn clockwise to take up the slack. You got to pick it up so that you have a tight enough chain. You just want it snug tight. It's not like real tight. Just a few turns and that's all it really takes. And it's tight enough for us to slide out the blocks. We put in the blocks underneath should be on the sides because there's a shortened edge on the other sides. So when you put them in, make sure that they're like this. In theory, if someone made a bridge this tall, so 24 inches tall, we should still be able to hook up the device. We've got this hanging. Make sure when you do it, you put the screw part on the upper part, or else it's going to be in the way when you try to latch it. And then we take the chain and we put it on.
And that should about do it. Thank you very much to the Boston Society of Civil Engineers and to the NCEES for funding this. This is hopefully going to be something that everybody's going to love for years.